All right, good evening, happy holidays. I would like to call this Wednesday, December 18th, 2024, School Committee Business Meeting to order. Mrs. Yell, could you take the roll, please?
Mayor Reardon?
I'm here.
Sarah Hall?
Here.
Kathleen Shaw?
Here.
Juliet Walker?
Present.
Brian Callahan?
Here.
Brianna Higgins?
Here.
And Andy Folger is absent.
All right, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Hall.
Okay, thank you. No public comment this evening, so we'll go right on to the consent agenda. Also, no warrants. Those were due yesterday, so we took care of them at FinCom last week. Two sets of minutes. The first one is from the brief Zoom meeting we had on November 15th. Were there any corrections to those minutes? All right, motion to approve the November 15th minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then we have the set from our last business meeting. That was December 2nd. Any corrections to those minutes? Motion to approve the December 2nd minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Over to you, Theo.
Perfect, thank you. Beginning with the Bresnahan tonight, Bresnahan students recently participated in the Hour of Code last week, which is a worldwide play-based movement that gets students engaged in coding, collaboration, critical thinking, and communicating. Thank you to our STEM teacher, Kristen Spinney, and our technology integrator, Stacy Boucher, for making this happen. Third graders also participated in a special classroom program hosted by Mass Audubon. Students enjoyed learning about the behavior and adaptations of our local owls and even had the chance to dissect an owl pellet. I'd like to thank the PTO for funding this engaging and interesting learning opportunity. The Bresnahan will additionally host a musical assembly this week with our favorite NHS performing artists. We are thrilled to host our annual sing-along with them. It is a wonderful opportunity to get our youngest and oldest students together to celebrate and embody the mission of the Newburyport Public Schools. The Mullins Holiday Magic is in full swing with the Holidays Around the World Doors display. Our creative students and dedicated teachers are transforming classroom doors into captivating showcases of global traditions. From the celebration of light on St. Lucia Day to the cozy warmth of Yalda, the merry traditions of Christmas in Brazil, and the vibrant spirit of Kwanzaa, each door tells a unique tale of cultural richness. Mullins students will also extend their holiday cheer by caroling at local nursing homes. Sixth graders at the Knock had a recent enriching experience while attending a performance of A Christmas Carol. Following the performance, our teachers have been conducting engaging preview and follow-up lessons that not only enhance the students' understanding of the classic text, but also align with our academic standards. This opportunity has helped to deepen the students' appreciation for literature while reinforcing critical thinking and analysis skills. Additionally, I'd like to share that the 8th grade students will be participating in the upcoming Career Speaker Series, which will launch after the holiday break. This initiative aims to expose our students to a variety of professions and provide valuable insights into potential career paths. We look forward to fostering the students' interest and helping them make connections between their education and future opportunities, which align with our Portrait of a Graduate goals. The Global Citizenship Program at the high school has been busy with sophomores working towards the completion of a UNESCO online course that develops their understanding of themselves as global citizens. Upon completion this month, they will receive a certificate from the course. In addition, we had a great workshop during the NHS Showcase Night with Greg Cole's Dance and Drums Company as our guest artist, where we explored the African diaspora through the African drum. Superintendent Gallagher and Principal Wolf, along with the 8th grade parents and students, joined in throughout the evening. A grant from the NEF supported this participatory workshop. The mock trial team is preparing for their first round of trials quite soon. They have been studying their assigned case and are working on their arguments and questioning. Thank you to advisor Melissa Martin and attorney Damian Turco for supporting the team as they get ready for their competitions. Congratulations are also in order for our investment club, who not only manage a portfolio using funding from the NEF, but also participate in the Massachusetts stock market game. In this simulation, participating schools receive an amount of money and develop and manage a portfolio over a 4-month period. This year, our team placed 3rd overall in the competition. Our investment club continues to be a top-tier group against other teams in the state. Finally, I would like to thank the Alliance of Climate Environmental Stewards for all of the work they did to organize yesterday's environmental open house. This was a great opportunity for our students to learn about the future of jobs in the environmental sector, as well as network with those in the field. Special thanks to presenters Mark Ritchie, Frank Arena, Maddie Roden, Dr. Aaron Hobbs, and Mayor Sean Reardon for taking time to speak to our students. That is all from me. Back to you.
Thank you, Theo. All right, now we're gonna hear from the Education Commonwealth Project. You wanna
Absolutely.
introduce that?
Yes. So, we're pleased to introduce our group here from ECP. So this stems from, I think, a lot of the conversations from school committee, looking at our strategic plan and how we're measuring our strategic plan initiatives throughout. So I'm pleased to introduce Peter Piazza, Director of School Quality Measures, and Julie Spencer Robinson, PhD of Head of Strategy and Operations from the Education Commonwealth Project. The Education Commonwealth Project works to expand the way learning and school quality are assessed and support schools and communities with free and open source tools, which is pretty good. ECP supports schools in creating quality measures and performance assessments, and tonight Dr. Piazza and Dr. Spencer Robinson will speak to us about the school quality measures frameworks and data dashboard. We're excited to have them share the strategies and the tools they have used with schools across the state to create a holistic picture of school quality that includes the 5 key measures that are very similar to our reimagined strategies within our current strategic plan. Those are teachers and leadership, resources, academic learning, school culture, and community and well-being. By creating opportunities to better understand school performance, SQM takes a new approach to data use. The data can be used to drive continuous improvement by identifying school strengths and areas for growth. A partner with ECP will support us in creating comprehensive dashboard to communicate, measure growth, and adapt tactical plans to meet our strategic goals. So it really ties in to our strategic planning and Portrait of a Graduate. You'll also hear our student and faculty voice is leveraged as a key part of this process, ensuring our data represents all key stakeholders that created our strategic plan. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Peter Piazza and Dr. Julie Spencer Robinson from the Education Commonwealth Project.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I think you've done our job for us.
All right. Not too bad.
You're going to hear some of that, the same information again. We'll make sure it gets in your brains. So we've already been introduced. So there we are. Our names and our titles. We are based at the Center for Education Policy, which is part of the College of Education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And I'll resist the temptation to ask if there are any alums in the room here. Professor Jack Schneider is the Executive Director of both ECP and the Center for Education Policy. Funding for our work comes primarily from the state legislature, which is what makes it possible for us to offer all of our tools and resources, as well as the support to use them for free to public schools in Massachusetts. So the mission of the Education Commonwealth Project is to challenge and expand the way student learning and school quality are assessed with an approach that is valid, democratic, and equitable. ECP supports schools and communities with free and open source tools and broadly seeks to foster state and national level change. So that's our formal mission of the Education Commonwealth Project. But I can't talk about ECP without first telling you about the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessment. In education, we love our acronyms and our jargon, and there's lots of it here, and I apologize for that. So MCIA was formed in 2016 by a group of 8 districts, you can see them there, who believed that there were better ways of in using MCAS to assess student learning and school quality. The consortium is governed by the superintendents and the union presidents of the member districts, and they are joined by representatives from our statewide partners, DESE, with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the MASS, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, the MTA, and the AFT-MAS, which are the 2 statewide teachers' unions. High-quality tools for assessing student learning and school quality were developed in collaboration with this group, and they were field-tested and piloted in these 8 districts. And Peter can tell you lots more about that process if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, very grassroots over a long period of time. The Education Commonwealth Project was created to disseminate these tools to public schools throughout the Commonwealth. So to assess student learning, MCIA and ECP districts use performance assessments. These are hands-on, real-world tasks that are aligned with state standards. We have a task bank of over 120 performance assessments in all content area, grades K through 12. These can be downloaded for free and modified as needed by teachers. To assess school quality, MCIA and ECP districts use a holistic school quality measures framework, which has 5 categories and 34 indicators. The data sources are student and educator surveys and administrative data that districts already report to DESE. Results are displayed on a dashboard, which provides a rich and comprehensive picture of the student educational experience. So as I said, ECP was created to make the performance assessment and SQM tools and resources, as well as the support to use them, available to Massachusetts public schools without joining the consortium. In 2 short years, we've worked with almost 24 districts across the state. We've actually got 36 active, in addition to the 8 MCIA districts. And I'll turn it over now to my colleague Peter, who will tell you much more about school quality measures.
Thanks, Julie. Hi, everyone. Good to be with you all. So I'm excited to talk about the school quality measures system. I am going to keep it at a high-level overview because I know we'll have time for questions, and we welcome any and all questions that you have about the project. So Julie talked about there's 2 wings of the plane that fly MCIA. There's performance assessment and school quality measurement. Dive into school quality here. As you've heard already, our purpose was to sort of illuminate the aspects of school quality that aren't easily captured by MCAS, but that wrap around the student's experience in school. Do they feel a sense of belonging in the school? Do they have strong relationships with their teachers? Are they thinking about their role as a member of a community? We hold ourselves to the highest standards of validity and reliability when it comes to the survey measures that we use. And we use these terms often. We often kind of sort of combine them together, so I want to just tease them out really briefly here. In establishing the validity of our survey measures, we reviewed research on all of the constructs that we're going to talk about in the school quality measurement system. All of the pieces that fit underneath that 5-part circle. We reviewed research on sort of best practices for understanding and measuring those things. What does it mean to measure sense of belonging, for example? We also met with teachers, parents, students in those founding 8 districts to say, what does a good school mean to you? What are the aspects of your experience in school, your child's experience in school, that are that you really want to know more about and you want to measure more deeply, and those things inform the school quality measures framework that you see over there. And then our statistical reliability is reviewed on a regular basis with help from research staff at the University of Massachusetts to ensure the integrity of the measures that we're using. There's a lot more details that I can go into on the statistical elements of the surveys, but I'm going to leave it there, and of course I welcome questions that you all have along those lines. So the school quality framework structured around 5 overarching categories of what our partners told us they wanted to see in terms of how we're defining school quality, right? So these are the same 5 things that you saw in the wheel on the previous slide. Now they're arrayed across the dashboard. None of these are surprising to folks who have spent time in schools: teachers and leadership, school culture, resources, academic learning, and community well-being. Now, for each of our school partners, we collect data across those 5 categories, and then we will display those data in a school quality dashboard that looks exactly like this. This is a screenshot from one of our school partners. Now, these big categories are organized into smaller subunits that allow us a finer grain size of analysis in terms of what's animating the climate in that school. So, for example, school culture, big category. We break that down by organizing it according to safety, relationships, and academic orientation. Then underneath those categories, there's another layer of insight. So these are measures that are underneath the relationships category. So we were in school culture and relationships. How do we define relationships? According to student sense of belonging and student-teacher relationships. Now, each of those big categories that you saw on the previous screen have measures at this level of grain size that allow us to kind of look in depth in what's happening at each of the schools in your district. Some of these, as you can see for our sense of belonging measure, are based on questions that students answer in their survey and teachers answer in their survey. Some of these measures are based on one of those student subgroups. Some of them, as Julie mentioned, bring in data from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. And we just piloted last year a parent survey to kind of corroborate the data that we're seeing from students and teachers, and that parent survey is available for any districts who are interested in the current school year. So this is one more level of overview where you're allowed this is a screenshot, but on the dashboard you can kind of click into those drop downs and see the questions that we use to understand these complex topics. Now I'm going to take you to my favorite page on the dashboard, which is the Analyze page, where you can now break down the data, the student data, according to subgroup categories. So now you're seeing real data from one of our school partners. This is a school that's grades 7 through 12. And when you look at the student-teacher relationships, if you look all the way to the right, you'll see the total at the aggregate level for that particular school, which is clearly masking some important variation, right, in what's happening across the school, across the grade levels at the school. In addition to breaking it down by grade level, the student survey data can be broken down by ELL status, special education status, student racial background, student income, and I always feel like I forget something. Gender. Gender is the other one. All in the drop-down menu there. These data are collected by our schools typically around the midpoint of the school year, typically that period of time between the MLK break or MLK weekend and February break. Though we offer flexibility in terms of whatever the paces that makes the most sense for your district. We promise a 2-week turnaround on those data. So as soon as you close your surveys, we are working to clean the data and to get it right uploaded into your dashboard. So then you may be asking, what do you then do with the data once it's collected? So there are a number of data uses here, but again, keeping this at a high level, I want to highlight a few things that are most common. We use this appreciative inquiry guide, and when I say appreciative inquiry, what I mean is that we always want to build from strengths that exist in a school. Our philosophy, our belief about schools is that there's always There are always things that a school does well, and there's always room for improvement. In every school, strengths and room for improvement. And we want to get to that room for improvement by building from the strengths. So the Appreciative Inquiry Guide is a compilation of data inquiry protocols that are structured around exactly this notion of identifying strengths towards the school improvement planning process. At the school level, that often means strategic planning around concrete improvement goals. And this could be really anything, no matter how specific you want it to be, to zero in on something that you want to improve in your school. So for example, in the slide earlier, I showed you this data that shows you that student-teacher relationships at this particular school in grades 7 and 8 are noticeably different, right, from the student-teacher relationships in the high school grades. That school in particular wanted to think about how to use their advisory periods in 7th and 8th to build out those relationships based on looking at that exact data. And so I met with these teams and we reviewed those the data like what you saw on the previous screen. We developed an action plan, and then the school leaders carried out that plan with regard to their advisory periods. Oftentimes, though, the data might not lead directly to an action plan from the dashboard. What might happen is that the data leads to more questions, and you want to go deeper to understand the why behind the numbers that you see there. And in those cases, I will visit a school. Some of our partners, our graduate students in the Center for Education Policy, will visit the schools with me to conduct empathy interviews with students and teachers to understand a little bit more about, we'll show a graph about sense of belonging and show variation across the grade levels or genders even, and ask the students their opinions about why the data is that way. And I know you all have such a rich culture of student voice and student engagement in Newburyport. And when those two things come together, student voice and this sort of rich data, can really lead to powerful conversations about improvement. That's at the school level. Now at the district level, many of our district partners use Portrait of a Graduate, and I know that that's true here in Newburyport as well. And so I pulled from one of our partners a crosswalk between Portrait of a Graduate and SQM. So one of their elements of Portrait of a Graduate is that they want students that actively listen to each other's thoughts, opinions, and ideas. Now, that is directly related to one of our survey topics, which is called Appreciation for Diversity, meaning diversity of thought. So do you consider opposing opinions? Do you listen to somebody who might be presenting an opposing argument, etc. And so they, in this particular district, will use the results from our Appreciation for Diversity scale to measure their progress on this Portrait of a Graduate element. And then, of course, some of our districts will crosswalk their school committee approved school improvement plans to the measures on SQM as a way of tracking progress towards 3 and 5 year goals that they've established. Again, these are all high-level examples. Happy to talk about any of these in more detail, but I'm going to pause it here because I realize that we both shared a lot of info. I'm going to give you our email addresses. Oh, okay. We'll share our email addresses in case you all have any questions afterwards. But I know we have questions now, so I think we can open it up to that. Yeah.
It's all right, I want to just throw out so they know
Please.
that when you were seeing the school quality measures data, that was from the MCIEA districts, and they all voted to make their data public. The ECP data is not public for any of our
That's
partner
right.
districts. It's private data and it's password protected. So it's the district leaders who have access to it only.
Right. That's an important clarification.
We have any questions, comments?
I guess
Ms. Walker, yeah.
So
can you, I mean, maybe, is there more to your presentation? I'm sorry, I don't wanna
That's it.
jump ahead. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to
So-
overwhelm too much with information, but yeah.
So you mentioned the program areas for ECP are performance assessment and school quality measures, and I guess I'm trying to understand where the performance assessment fits in.
So, these 8 districts who founded the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessment recognized that in Massachusetts, MCAS was used both to measure student learning and to measure school quality. And so our performance assessment work is a response to using MCAS as a measure of student learning, instead these hands-on, real-world, standards-aligned performance tasks. So that's one side of our work. And then MCAS scores are part of the statewide accountability system. And so the school quality measures program area is the consortium's answer to that. So MCAS is being used for 2 things, and so 2 program areas.
All right, and so and these communities opt in to your service?
Yeah, that's, so the MCIA districts, there's a high threshold for belonging to the consortium. All 8 districts agreed to use both sets of tools, so to work in both program areas. For the ECP districts, the mission was to get those tools out across the state. And ECP districts can work in one program area or the other. They can also do just parts of it. So all the MCIA districts do the student survey, the teacher survey, and they have their data dashboard. If you just wanted the teacher survey from us, you can have the teacher survey. You can work in very discrete areas. So ECP districts have a lot of flexibility. One important essential piece of it, though, is the support of the union in the district, because we recognize that if educators aren't supportive, especially of the data gathering, you're not going to have valid data, right? So we want, it's important to partner with educators in the work.
So explain how that would work. Sorry.
For the
Ms. Cherhall.
for the ECP districts, it's a.
So how, like, if somebody's interested, for example, Newburyport, how does that work that you how do you decide, how do you figure out if the union support it or not? Like, what is the mechanism for that?
Yeah, that would come, that comes from, I think, the work that we've already been doing, and working with our teachers already about really taking that strategic plan and all of those other, buckets of our strategic plan, and then working with the teachers on how we're gonna measure it. So they would be on board of working.
In the
with this
ECP
group.
partner districts, typically it's the superintendent or the assistant superintendent who meets with the union leadership team or the union president to describe the work and request their support for it. We also will meet with union leaders too, if there's some interest in that.
Yeah.
And so that process is, like, typically, is it like a school committee vote, or is it just the superintendent deciding, and you ask for that evidence of union buy-in, but you're not.
We say that we want to make sure that this has a support of the union. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I have a few questions for you. What have you seen, or have you looked at the correlation between the state accountability system and your SQM?
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Because there are certainly overlapping goals, right, of these. And a few years ago, we ran a kind of thought experiment that we later published in a journal that the name is completely escaping me, but if anybody's interested, I can share the link to it. And the thought experiment was, what if districts across the state of Massachusetts use the school quality measures survey data as 25% of their state accountability rating. So keep all the other portions of the state accountability rating the same, but then that is reduced to 75%, and 25% is the results on school quality measures. And what we learned there is that it sort of starts to sort of weaken the link between demographics, school demographics, and the state accountability rating. And so schools that were rated lower under the traditional accountability system, under our thought experiment model, saw their ratings rise. And this was a quantitative exploration, so we don't exactly know why that was the case. But I think you know, you could assume that it has a lot to do with the fact that school quality measures is collecting such a wide range of data about all the wonderful and complex things that you all are doing in schools, and so when schools are when that is recognized as such in an accountability rating, it starts to break that link between demographics and percentile. Is that sort of getting at the question that you were?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's interesting, that's good to know, but
Yeah.
I guess I also wanted, the sample size is relatively small, right, with the first 8 districts, and then it's growing from there, but I'm trying to understand, like, in the SQM, which is providing, I think, really critical and important data for school leaders, would an SQM, you know, potentially rate a school as on that ideal range or on the warning range when their percentile in the state accountability system is very much the opposite? Like, are they at all correlated, or sometimes do they end up very, very different?
I've seen a really wide range, and you know, I can give an example from one of our partners that's, I think, in the bottom 20% of the state accountability system, yet their sense of belonging scores are absolutely through the roof in their school, and you feel it when you go to the school, the warmth of the relationships between the teachers and the students in that building, you know. And this is actually one of the schools where we did implement the focus groups to try to just understand a little bit more about what do you all do here, again, building from strengths, what do you all do here that is working so well? And then this is a case where I think SQM shines a light in an area that MCAS is just unable to see about the again, whether somebody feels a sense of belonging in a school, have a strong relationship with their teachers. And then I think that there's a flip side of it too. There's some schools that are ranked very high in the percentiles, and again, every school has areas for growth. Every school has room for improvements, and in some of those cases, we'll see places where students are feeling a certain level of academic stress, right? This is another one of these examples where SQM data doesn't align with the percentile ranking because it's showing something, it's shining this light on something that the MCAS just can't quite reach. And in those cases, we'll build in, I've been working in that district to just understand the sources of student academic stress, bullying. In this case, we did focus groups with students in a middle school earlier this fall even to understand that in more detail.
And I would add that, you know, what's really different about the state accountability system, the rankings of our schools and our districts, our schools really, because that's what are ranked, and the SQM approach is that the percentile ranking is a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah.
If someone, you can't go up without someone going down. Ooh, I keep hitting that microphone.
Yeah.
And that's not what school quality measures is about at all. In fact, there have been really robust discussions within the consortium, and Erica Gonzalez is an associate commissioner at DESE who is has been working with MCI for years. She would be a really interesting person to talk more about this if you wanted to explore her perspective on it. But the consortium members feel really strongly that they don't want school quality measures data used to compare schools within a district or between districts, right? Because that can even happen in a district if there's variability within your schools, and that's not healthy in education. So that's what makes it, and the accountability system has to do with federal regulations, right? So it's not something that, you know, necessarily there's choice over, but these districts wanted something different.
Sure. Thank you for answering those questions. Do you mind if I have just one more comment?
Did anyone else have questions? We'll come back to you,
Sure,
okay?
go ahead.
Under the school quality measures with the student and educator surveys, talked about, you know, being able to identify the high need areas like low income, special ed, and EL. What about mental health and LGBTQ+?
Yeah, so I'll address the LGBTQ+ demographic first. This is something that we've been looking into closely in recent years. I'll put the caveat on this, which is that different districts approach this in different ways, right? For districts,
And it's up to the districts.
right,
We don't prescribe anything.
right, it's up to the districts how we do this. In some cases, districts prefer for us to just get student gender data from DESE. And so I'll collect student LACID and then use the locally assigned student ID to link up to the school's student information export, and that's how we know the demographics of students. But the reason I'm saying all of this is to say some districts won't allow students to self-identify, especially in high school, right? And we actually ran an analysis recently that found that students who identify as non-binary in an anonymous survey that number is higher than what you see in DESE, right? And in those places, we can break down the data accordingly, and then talk about how the school climate is welcoming and can potentially be more welcoming for students, again, who identify as non-binary. Now, that is the closest that we come to the student groups that you mentioned. Things like mental health and things like LGBTQ plus status are things that we're not collecting either from self-report or from DESE, certainly. But those are things that, with the trust and support of those in the school community, proceed at the speed of trust when it comes to our partners, always. But with the trust and support of the school community, we can begin to have these, albeit difficult, conversations in a focus group setting, for example, which is, again, what we were doing in this case when it came to, with our district partner who's concerned about the experience of non-binary students. But that is, again, this is something that is customizable top to bottom in terms of how the district would approach it. And what we do is just provide as many options available to districts, and then talk about the best ways to gather the data that you want to gather.
This may be obvious, but I'll say it anyway. The reason why there's a discrepancy between the percentage of students who identify as non-binary on the SQM survey versus with the data that's reported to DESE by the district typically has to do with the fact that when students are enrolled by their families, it's at a very young age, and a student's self-perception might change as they go through school. So simply highlighting that discrepancy, so district leaders like you all don't have an accurate understanding of the number of non-binary students in your district, as an example. And so simply allowing students to self-identify when they take the survey, if that's your choice, which it doesn't have to be, would get you a more accurate number and help you understand, oh, it's a bigger population than we thought.
Yeah, these are politically sensitive topics, right?
Yes.
Of course, that are not, it's not specific to Newburyport or any one community, and we want to both fully recognize that, and so this is why we defer to local communities about what's best in local communities. But we also want to be very clear that whether it sounds political or not, we want schools to be inclusive places for all students. And so that's why we offer the option of gathering these data, because we think it can be a powerful and unique driver for change, especially given the fact that the DESE data, again, can't shine the light on the topic in the way that student self-report data can illuminate. So.
And the second part was self-reporting on mental health.
Yeah, I mean, these are just that, obviously critically important social issue.
Questions on the survey.
Oh yeah, there's questions on the surveys that speak to this for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are questions on the survey about their experiences with bullying. There are questions on the survey about the level of stress that they feel on a typical day in school.
The support they have in the district, in the school
Yeah, there are questions, right, exactly. There are questions about the adults who are there to support students socially, academically, so on and so forth. And then on the parent survey, if for any districts that are interested in that, there are also questions about parental access to support for their children, if their children feel, if they feel they need that for their children. Yeah, I think with those,
I'm just, there's been a strong element in the curriculum around, trauma-informed
yeah.
teaching, so I guess having a little bit more information, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm also a mental health professional, so I see the other side of it.
And you're saying having more information.
I think it's helpful for the school.
Yeah, right.
Both issues I have seen in students, not just here, but in surrounding communities. It's becoming more prevalent in terms of feeling that they belong, either LGBTQ plus students or kids with mental health issues that are, how they're being received by staff, peers, access to folks to support them basically within the system.
Right.
As well as outside the system.
Right. Yeah, and nothing. I'm gonna butcher this quote, but I'm thinking of a James Baldwin quote about nothing that isn't faced can't be solved. That's definitely not it. But I hope that you hear you have to face something in order to address it, and I think that the SQM data gestures in that direction. And just one last quick point on this, because of the timeliness of this issue, we've sought funds from the Center for Education Policy at UMass has pursued grant funds to address exactly this issue about belongingness related to student gender and gender identity. Again, because we value it as something that is critically important, and we're happy to bring in district partners who share that value, but won't be forced on anybody who doesn't. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Higgins, did you have a follow-up question?
I didn't have another question. I just had a comment for the superintendent. So, thank you. I really appreciate you bringing this group in. Familiar with your work and this organization. I think it's really commendable. I really appreciate that you're responding to what we're saying about wanting to measure the things that we care about and wanting to be able to see how are we doing with these things in a more holistic sense than the data that we already have now. So I think that that's really exciting. I think one of the I would want just more information. I'll spend some time myself looking through the website and kind of seeing a little bit more of like the sub-bullets for each of these. But my one kind of wondering would be, and you did bring this up talking with the teachers unions, but getting the support of the union president is not always correlated with the support of all the faculty and the principals, right? And so I just want to say one wondering is that sometimes when districts create a school quality framework, it's locally developed, right? They go through a whole stakeholder engagement process and they develop what are the indicators of success that this community cares about, very similar to the portrait of a graduate and the strategic plan. Like, we already have those things, right? But then once you create the framework and then you populate it, we all say, these are all the things we said we want and we care about. And so when it goes up there, we all have to kind of own the data and say, how are we going to respond to whatever is up here? And I do really like this organization. I do really like that all of these measures are valid and reliable and research-based. And I want to make sure that the faculty here all believe that these things that they didn't pick are valid measures of what they believe a quality school environment is, because if the faculty here and the principals, and the district leaders don't agree with this system, then I think we're in the same sort of boat as any like accountability or MCAS presentation where they're saying, this is the data, but I don't really care about that measure, or like I don't think that's really an accurate measure of my school, right? Where I guess I would just want to know or be kind of more assured beyond like the union president approval to say like, yes, this is something that we all care about.
Yeah, and I think that, so we've been doing a lot of work with our faculty support staff. So it's not necessarily the work that Lisa Furlong and Tom Abrams and our principals. So our faculty meetings is truly a collaborative where you have administrators and teachers. For 2 years, they've been really working on the portrait of a graduate. And what I really believe is through the strategic plan, if you look at our 5 strategies, they tie very nicely to these 5 strategies. So it's not necessarily a stretch for our teachers to see, oh, you know, being civically engaged, where does that fit? And it aligns very well. The other piece that I think is important is I think we've had a lot of momentum where our teachers, from the veteran teachers to our newer teachers, have this new enthusiasm through the Portrait of a Graduate, through the ambassador work that we've done. So I think now, as we're in year 2 of a lot of this work that we've been doing for 2 years, now as we present this to them, and I know Ms. Furlong's already had conversations with our teacher leaders, and not just the union president, but the people on the ground, the classroom teachers, that they're in favor of this measurement, because on the flip side, I think it's going to show a lot of the work that we're doing on a daily basis. And even from my superintendent advisory meeting yesterday, having the conversations with those parents and them understanding the great work that we're doing because they're talking to their own child. That was the big question we had last night, was how do you spread the word of all of this work that's going on? And then we talked about this. So with having that dashboard, it would have the community, the general public, the parents to kind of look at these 5 areas which tie directly to the strategic plan, which really then ties directly to the NEAS standards, very similar. So I think you'll see a through line through everything. But the more we've had our conversations at the school committee level, and when we do our annual report and all these great things, it's, how do you measure these things collectively? And I think this group, and they just gave you a snapshot, but there's 34 indicators in those different areas. And what I really liked from talking to some of the other districts, and going back to your point, one district there had great, assessment scores, but the culture was concerning. Now, they would, if you didn't have that data, if you're a superintendent or a principal, or any type of administrator, and you're looking at MCAS scores and assessments, and you're like, this is awesome, we got a great school, but then you look at the culture of belonging and talking to some of those leaders, they're like, whoa, what? And then it gives us, I think, a focus of each year as we develop our school improvement plans, working with the school councils. It's like perception and reality. So our perception, we might say, oh, we're doing wonderful here, but when we get this data, then we can shift focus. So that's what I really liked about working with this group. And then also it ties, it's not like a big leap for our teachers and all the work. It's not like, oh, we're doing all this, now you're gonna make us do X. So I think there is a belief that, this would be a good measure for us. And then we also have those 8 other districts that we can reach out to. So I really like it, because I do believe it gives, each year it gives you a focus, and what's important for every year, and it really ties back to that tactical piece that we're talking about, like the tactics of the 2-year plans. You still have your strategies with the vision, Portrait of a Graduate, making sure our students are college and career ready, and are going to be able to succeed. So, and that's, obviously standardized testing, that doesn't go away. That's still there. I mean, that's a big piece of it. Along with, we can also add other internal assessments, part of that whole academic piece, part of that dashboard. So, I don't know, I think that On my perspective, I think it ties in well to a lot of the work that we're already doing. So I don't see it as a heavy lift for teachers or a surprise. And I do believe we've established our culture here where the professionals, where we're all, obviously we all have different roles, but as educators, we come to the table and do what's best for students. And I think this tool will allow us to do that. So if our teachers are seeing an area at a school or a grade level, I think this information will give them even more enthusiasm, like, wow, this is what we really need to focus on. So that's kind of where I feel. So.
Yeah, just to follow up, for clarity, so you're considering the superintendent, or maybe you've already made the decision, I don't know where we are in the decision, for the SQM program area, but not performance assessment.
I would like to do both. I would like
Okay.
to do, the whole, from talking to those other 8 districts, having that opportunity, I think it allows us to dive in. And then it also gives us an opportunity of what do we think, as Dr. Higgins said, with the teachers, bringing them to the table on what we want to assess in these 5 different areas. So having a collaborative process, so the survey questions and working with this group, it's a collaborative process of this is what we'd like to measure, and then working with them on what questions. But I would like to do both. I think it's easy for us to say, oh, we want a teacher survey here, we want a student survey, hey, let's survey this. But what I really like about the program by going in, you're gonna have it all together and not piecemeal. Like, oh, teachers, said this, let's do this survey, or students say this, let's do this survey. It's really a focused assessment, I think, for the school.
The performance assessment work is also free to participating districts. So on that side of the project, we offer 4 days of training, really high quality professional development. So 2 days during the summer, 1 in November and 1 in June, which your district would be invited to participate in. This year we're doing a special performance assessment institute just for high school teachers who might be starting to think differently about competency determination in this post question 2 world. So looking at capstones, portfolios, or other kinds of something aligned with their portraits of a graduate, depending on the district. Coming out of those 4 days, teachers are so much better at designing high quality assessments, which we know that there's an element of subjectivity in teacher design assessments, and after this 4 days of training, it changes. They take a task after the 2 days of training, they take a task from the task bank, administer it in their class, bring their student work back to learn how to score it, then they develop their own task, administer to their students, bring it back and score it. We use double-blind scoring so that teachers can get really good at double-blind means you don't know whose work you're scoring, and it's scored by another educator as well, and you compare your scores to see how you did, to bring more objectivity into it, right, to make the data more valid.
Okay. So it sounds like the performance assessment is a training to enable teachers to do better, to create their own teacher assessment tool.
Yeah,
So it's not like a tool you give them, it's more a capability.
And the task bank has over 120 performance assessments that are free and ready to go that teachers can download. So
Okay.
if I am a project-based teacher already, like because performance assessment requires a shift in classroom instruction where there is much more hands-on kinds of project work done by students, right? You can't just drop a performance assessment into the classroom. But if I'm already there as an educator, and I can go to the task bank and say that task would work really well with my unit on, whatever it is, and then
Okay.
modify it and then administer it. But yeah, the training for the 4-day training is definitely, a keystone of it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think you said this, but just to reiterate, this is a free program.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that was the other piece too, with, question 2 and MCAS, and understanding that this program is being funded by the legislators, by the state, and then looking at assessment, this could be something down the road that eventually the state, may adopt or adopt pieces of this. So I look at this as if it's being funded by the state of Massachusetts for an, I don't want to call it an alternative assessment, but a piece of the assessment of the whole child in the school system. I think this could be something down the road that could become a new assessment or a piece of the assessment. So that's the other piece to, for me, and understanding it's, there's state funding going into this project. And, and no offense, you're not consultants with a
We don't get
business.
commissions.
Right.
Yeah.
But working with the state legislators, also having people from DESI on your board and working with you all, I foresee that this could become the new normal down the line.
Yep.
And so to be ahead of this a little bit might benefit us all.
It'll certainly inform, your discussions that you have.
Correct. Yeah, 100%.
Quick follow-up. So I love how customizable this is and building on strengths. Wonderful. I'm curious, and this is probably more a question for you, it's who will be making these decisions about what our dashboard looks like? Do you have an existing team? Would you put a team together?
Oh, yeah, I think it ties back to the work that we've been doing with our, the instructional coaches, Lisa Furlong, CEL's leadership team, at the building levels. But yeah, it would be a collaborative effort. The dashboard, I think for the work that we would be doing is really looking at the survey data, what questions we want to ask, but I think your dashboard is very similar.
Yeah.
The template's similar, but the data that we are trying to pull out of the district that's where the collaboration and the work would go.
We create the dashboard for you, but it's your data.
Correct.
And I'll say, with our district partners, it's most commonly either the sort of like district level admin team, school level ILTs are my most like common touch points. More recently, this kind of connects to the issues that we were just talking about, DEI committees, if those exist at the school or district level, have been my touch points.
School councils.
School councils, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I made presentations to school site councils, school committees. In some cases, one elementary school might say, our grade 5 team really wants to take this and run with it, and so that'll be my touch point, the grade level teams, whatever works best for you, but those are the most common, like points of engagement, I guess.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, for us, it would be our vertical team that's been doing a lot of that work.
All right, I think we're all set. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. No, thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.
All right, so we're moving on to our subcommittee updates, starting with FinCom. Mr. Callahan?
Hello.
Hi.
We met last Thursday. Our new temp finance business manager, Mike Wood, was there. It was great to have him. And essentially, we talked about transfers. The only reason I had that in the agenda was because of the whole water heater transfer thing, but it turns out we didn't have to deal with that at all. Mayor Reardon wanted to, he was in attendance because he wanted to talk about the central office budget and how we can go into a deeper dive into that. So we decided that in March, we're gonna have 2 FinCom hearings that will focus on that. We don't have dates yet. And the athletic temporary, I don't know what his title is, I'm sorry, I get it wrong every time. Jim Antonelli
There you go.
was there. He had received comps from all the Cal schools about what it costs to play sports. Some of them were shockingly high, I thought. But some districts had family caps, which we don't have. So there were lots of information that once we kind of put it all together, then we'll all talk about it and see where we want to go. And I'm really interested in having that done before anything happens with the beginning of planning to register for fall sports. So before the end of the school year, for
Correct.
sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to have that done.
The budget.
That's really about it.
Can I just ask a quick clarification? I think we do have family caps for athletic fees.
If we do, they're not listed on the sheet.
Yeah, it wasn't listed.
Okay,
That's
double check
interesting.
that, because I'm from a two athlete family,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure I get that question when I sign up. And maybe it's self-reporting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What was in the?
There are things missing from that sheet, though. Like there are a
Right.
couple
No,
sports
it's
that aren't even
pretty
on it.
Oh, is it?
No,
So-
that's interesting, because I specifically asked the acting athletic
I was
director,
pretty
and he
sure we
said we
did
do
have.
not
I
have
thought we
that.
did.
I don't know. I have a two,
So,
or had a two sport
yeah.
thing too, and don't
And
Well,
you
remember.
don't
that's
remember
something to
that?
clarify.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I'm.
Although I shouldn't even say that because one of them was in 8th grade, and that's the year it went free. So maybe I never had
Yeah,
to deal
I
with it.
thought,
Yeah.
maybe, okay,
We'll get that clarified.
Okay.
'cause
But we'll
that's-
know.
That was a question
Yeah.
I had.
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you.
All set?
All set.
All right, Ms. Walker?
No update, we did not meet this month
Okay.
for policy.
And Mr. Boger is not here, and I can report that our meeting was canceled as well. So we have an integrated arts project media lab approval happening.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. So this is, I think, more of a formality, but working with Member Walker and making sure we double check our policies. So this policy, and we just highlighted for the school committee, public gifts to schools, gifts to award involve changes. So basically, the gift to schools from the NEF or the PTO, the policy superintendent, I notify everyone that, PTO is donating, let's say, $50,000 for transportation. But in this part of the policy, the gifts that would have any change to school facilities or sites will be subject to school committee approval. The NEF is funding the integrated arts project, but we're renovating that classroom space. So according to our policy, that would be needed a vote, because we're gonna be renovating that classroom space. But we've presented, I think, multiple times on this project, so that's why that's there for tonight, for a formal vote.
So what we're doing, we're voting to accept the initial money.
No,
That's
that's in my superintendent's report, so your vote, yes, you're voting for the entire project because the NEF is, the major donor of the renovation. So since we're renovating that classroom and turning it into a media lab, school committee's gotta vote on that.
So Mike, we talked about something similar. So whatever, say it's $100,000. We're not getting $100,000 all at once. It's coming out from the NEF
Correct.
over time.
Right.
So do we vote to accept it piecemeal? Because we're not getting $100,000. We're getting, say, $30,000. Do we
Three.
vote on 30 and then we
Right.
vote on
That's
30
what I was-
again?
I think we're really voting on the policy,
Yep.
that there's gonna be a change to, a physical
Correct.
change to our classrooms.
Not
We have to
the funding.
approve the
Right.
overall plan without
Okay.
approving like the money and all that stuff.
Correct.
We're approving
Okay.
like, they
Well-
can move forward with this.
Yeah, just to clarify, maybe this would help folks. So the policy that the superintendent's referring to is policy KCD, which is public gifts to schools. And basically, for organizations that we have a longstanding relationship, such as the NEF, gifts don't have to come to the school committee for approval. Gifts or donations don't have to come to the school committee for approval from those types of organizations. So those examples are like PTO, NEF, and a well-established partner that we've received grants from in the past, for any amount. But that's reported to us via the FinCom, so that would come to you guys, you would hear about it if it's over $2,500.
Right.
Outside of that, even if it's an established partner, like the NEF, gifts that would involve changes in school facilities, and they give examples, or sites, will be subject to school committee approval. So to your point, are we approving each individual gift as it comes, each individual component of the NEF's funding of this project? I think we can tailor the motion to say, we approve the project and support the NEF gifts to support this project, and we can just have that cover the current and future gifts. The problem is we're not necessarily then identifying a specific amount, just, so if people are comfortable with that, that's fine, but we only know the initial amount at this point. we could also do it the way what you alluded to is, do we approve it each time we get another donation? And I guess just for the school committee to consider this, the reason for this ability to approve these gifts is, we are responsible for school facilities, right? I mean, we have some jurisdiction, I would say, although it's a shared facility, so the school city council and mayor also have oversight, but what happens to those facilities falls under our purview. So if we feel that, that media lab changes in the future and we want to have some ability to have some input on that through this mechanism, we could say we're just going to approve this initial amount. I think that's up to the maker of the motion, whoever that ends up being.
Could that be you?
I want to pause and see if anyone else wants to.
I'll try. I don't know the letters though.
It's
so-
in the,
It's KCD.
KCD, okay, thank you. So I will make a motion to, sorry, are we
It's okay.
accepting a donation?
Well, I
Except
think
to
that's
accept-
why I wanted to
So
pause.
I guess
and
what I
just
was
see,
trying
yeah.
to go with is to accept a donation for the Integrated Arts Media Project. This is where I'm getting stuck. As presented to us up to this date. So then if there's changes in the future, that would then come back to us. So any amount of funding into the future to approve the Integrated Arts Project Media Lab as presented to the school committee up through this date.
I think that makes
That
sense.
works.
I would second that, and I would just, to add to the conversation, just, basically the spirit of the motion is that we are supportive of the project as presented to date. If there
Thank
are changes in the future and we have additional gifts for approval, we'd want to make an additional approval or have that discussion at that time.
discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report?
All right, I'll start, since we're on the integrated arts, I have some timelines that Mr. McSweeney provided us. So the final design plans have been made, and we're currently working on the technology equipment list. That's where a lot of the funding is gonna be coming out of, is the upgraded technology. Tomorrow, there's an on-site walkthrough with the architects and Mr. McSweeney. Furniture details and plans are set as we review the plan for Thursday, so tomorrow. And then timing for bidding and construction will be discussed at the December 19th meeting. Our preliminary, discuss putting project out to bid by mid-January, with the bids due the first week of February. So once the bids are done and are back and contracts are signed, construction would be the beginning of March and last roughly 6 to 8 weeks. Mr. McSweeney put extra weeks on there, but he really believes we're gonna start doing some of the demolition over the winter break, which our guys are doing, as an in-kind, service. But once that's done, the construction company that's coming in there won't be a lot of that on there. They're just coming in and just building. So the funding for this funding is furniture, the AV technology equipment, that would be part of it, and then also portions of the demolition and existing space will be done by our faculty. So we're on track. The final review, the architect with Mr. McSweeney, looking at the space one last time tomorrow. So, but it's gonna be a game changer, I think, for the school, with having that accessible for all grades, and really ties into that portrait of a graduate and the development of that portfolio. So by the time all students graduate, they'll have their own academic portfolio highlighting their high school career, which is pretty impressive. So,
I just have a question. Is Mr. McSweeney handling like the permitting and all the stuff with the building department and things like that?
yeah, him and I think the architect does all that stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any other?
Oh, I was thinking.
Items?
Sorry. A long week for all of us, I think. Yeah, and just the process for the water heater, I did communicate through email to the school committee. But we're gonna go through the process where I went to city council, and I think it goes to their budget and finance. And when that date is, Mr. McSweeney and I will present. And then I believe that from there, it goes back to the city council for an overall vote. At this time, we use the 3 areas of our building maintenance. So we use the funds from 3 different areas, NHS maintenance, the building and grounds district-wide, and our HVAC account for the NOC in the high school to utilize those funds to pay the company that came in and expedited the work for us. So that's where we're at with that. And that's my 2 updates.
Nothing on fundraising, that was,
Oh.
for next time maybe?
No, we have it, it's in the packet.
There were a couple, the new fundraising forum, right?
I know.
That you were
I'm
gonna
like,
share
I'm
that?
falling apart, yeah. Sorry. There's 2 things. One, we have the fundraising, it's in the back here. So here's our form, the new fundraising form, permission slips, financial report. We worked through all of this with our principals. Michelle did a great job in bringing a lot of the policies in on the form. And then the other piece that we've done is we have all fundraising up on the website now. Right, that's live now, Michelle, correct? So that was the other piece, I think, from Mr. Callahan and other members, is we should be posting the fundraising for the public, and that is up and running. So I think with the process that we have in place, with the checks and balances, we should have a better tracking of fundraising throughout the district.
Do you know what section of the website that's under?
District
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
fundraising, it gets right there
Thank
in
you.
the drop down.
All right.
You're still going with paper forms, though, huh?
What's that?
You're still going with paper forms?
One accomplishment at a time.
Getting there.
It's already works. It's here. Oh my gosh.
Superintendent and Ms. Yell, sorry, I missed your call. This is awesome. I mean, there's a list right there on the page.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
I hope that Member Callahan is secretly celebrating, because this is
Yes.
what he has been working on
Yes.
for many years.
I do want to thank John Rickey of the PTO, too, because he was really helpful in that whole thing. So they probably do the most, right? So.
Right.
All right, thank you.
I'm waiting for one more thanks. Is that happening
He's
tonight
thinking
before
it.
the holidays?
I can't say it.
Or you save it for next year?
Thank you, Superintendent.
Oh, all right.
There we go.
That's in bold in the minutes, Ms. Joe, please.
I just have one quick follow-up. I believe I did email everyone about our winter retreat, but just a reminder, it's scheduled for Saturday, January 11th from 8 to 2 in the NOC Library. I had a productive meeting last week with the mayor and Ms. Walker, and we kind of brainstormed and came up with a general plan for the day. We're still taking suggestions on lunch, which I think Ms. Walker will be heading up lunch. So if you have thoughts about lunch, you can
I'm
let
not
her know.
making lunch.
Second.
Not making it, no, planning it. So for the morning, we will have, I don't know if you figured out who, but one of our attorneys will be coming in that morning, Peter or Michelle.
Correct.
Will come in to talk about open meeting law and executive sessions. We weren't sure if it would make sense to touch on competency determination
Yeah, we'll have
as
some
part of that. I
information on
know
Yeah.
Ms. Higgins had mentioned adding that in, and so we're just trying to figure out where that would fit best. But maybe to, get the legal side of it would be helpful to be part of that conversation. And then in the afternoon, we're going to get into some school committee goals, superintendent goals, and superintendent evaluation. I don't know, Mayor, if you want to say more about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, just we had a great meeting last week, and I think we've got some good topics to go through. Superintendent evaluation, we do it every other year, so this is gonna be our year coming up, and, this is the first time that somebody who hadn't been on the school committee for 20 years was kind of running that show on the evaluation, so.
So without Mr. Menon, we'll
Right,
have to
so, we're gonna tackle that.
get our
and
feet
then,
wet on that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, talking about like, superintendent goals, I think it'll be a good conversation to look at, what we currently do for evaluation and what other things that we would like to look at, moving forward. Yeah, so it should be a great day.
Thank you. All right. Anyone have new business? I have one item, but anyone else? Yes.
Just wanted to update there was a CPAC, virtual meeting on 12/10, and it was with the Amesbury CPAC, which is kind of nice because they'll be able to maybe plan some more, events, together going forward. And it was with the Bureau of Special Ed Appeals, and it was basically everything you need to know about mediation. So, yeah, so that took place. And I just want to put a shout out to, I think it was Paul White primarily. I don't want to forget anybody, but I went to the Think Kids training last Thursday and Friday on collaborative problem solving, and that's based out of a lot of the work of Ross Green out of Mass General. And I got a shout out to Lisa Furlong for letting me know about it. Hopefully I'm not leaving out other people in the planning process. My takeaway from it is this is great for our teachers and other staff in terms of re-looking at kids and their behavior and how to address it in a more mutual way. And there's a plan A, B, and C. I love that. And the other thing was to think about and figuring out, I've been sort of thinking, how could we have a component that would be applicable to parents and other caregivers that would complement this? And thinking of hitting up Andrea Egmont and the parent speaker series, because I think that there's a lot of value because the carryover would be tremendous. And I think that if we're implementing this collaborative approach in classrooms, for parents to have an understanding, A, about why, what plan A, B, and C is, and what would it look like in their home. So, yeah, just a thought, so I'll be knocking on Andrea's door and hopefully she'll open it and we'll have a discussion about that going forward.
What was the name of the training?
It's called Think Kids.
Thanks.
Yeah. It was well done. It was nice to hear from all the staff from all the different schools there and what they're doing, in that regard within their particular
It
schools.
was about 60 teachers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a great 2 days.
yeah, it was, yeah, I can't speak highly enough for it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, before this meeting, I sent out a draft of the committee assignments for 2025, so just check them out. If you like them, great, let me know individually. If you don't, let me know, and we'll see what we can do, but, individually, don't respond to that email I sent. But I don't know, that's where I landed with them, so.
Okay.
we'll see.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. So I just wanted to mention the competency determination. This is going to be an upcoming piece of work for our policy committee, not only the district, it's going to be a lot of work for the district that I think people don't expect, but also going to be some work for our policy committee. And so I'm hoping during our retreat we can kind of talk a little bit substantively about how are we going to kind of deal with some of the ramifications that the district needs to support in around this. And so to be specific, the district now needs to create a policy to certify coursework for the competency determination for current, future, and past students. passed is going to be the most difficult here. So a student who has formally attended Newburyport High School, doesn't matter how many years ago, and did not earn a competency determination because they did not pass the MCAS, can come back and say, hey, can I have a diploma? And the district now has the sole responsibility, the sole authority to determine, can that student earn a CD based on coursework they completed X number of years ago, and does it match the current legislation? And that's a lot. But, so the district's gonna have to come up with this process. Our policy committee can kind of discuss it. Perhaps we can talk about it a little bit more on our retreat, and then figure out like what is gonna be our policy going forward. But that would be for past students, which I think is likely the most complicated. But even going forward, it's a less complicated discussion, but no less important, that we need to figure out we now need to set, the CD didn't go away, right? It's just now not determined through the MCAS. So we need to actually set our own requirements for a CD, like how are students at Newburyport High School going to earn a CD? And so we actually have to figure that out as a district, and so that's gonna take a good amount of discussion. Want to make sure that that's on everyone's radar, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit more at the retreat, and then I'm sure the district will have a good lot of work to do for that. Thank you.
Well, I was before MCAS, and I graduated.
All right.
So I'm sure we can
There you
figure it out.
Me too.
So I just wanted to mention, some of you are already aware, the city council voted on Monday night to change their meeting schedule for 2025. So they will be meeting every third Monday, which puts them aligned with our meetings in certain months. So we're gonna have to figure out how we're going to adjust to that, if we're going to
Do Wednesdays.
move to Tuesdays or what. I'm not asking
Is
for.
is it every third Monday or is it every 3 weeks?
It's every three.
Every 3 weeks, but on a Monday.
On a Monday.
So I did just get the schedule, and I'm not looking to solve this now, but just to give everyone the awareness, I did check, and we are fine for our January meetings. So that does buy us a little time to figure out how we're gonna manage it moving forward, February on.
Yeah, and just to follow up, I do think it would be helpful to have a communication go to the city council that this has implications and why, in case there's a possibility for them to reconsider.
Sure, I would
Or
work
potentially
on that
just
with you if you
move
want.
to modify the meetings that have direct conflict with us. I mean, I think I did reach out to a couple counselors, and there was absolutely no consideration. It didn't even come up in the discussion that whether this would impact, how this would impact potentially the school committee. And I don't know that it's clearly understood that it's more than just the school committee inconvenience. It's also, the members of the public that rely
Community,
on
yeah.
a sort of ability to, even though we don't have tons of people in the audience, I know people watch us, and, to have conflicting meetings is not fair of two elected bodies is not fair to the public. I personally don't believe that.
I'd be happy to work with you on
Okay.
a communication.
You don't want my help.
All right, anyone else? Anything? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Listen, can I say happy holidays to everybody?
Yes.
We're not gonna see each other until 2025.
Yeah.
Enjoy
Thank
some
you.
downtime. Thank you
You
to
too.
Superintendent Gallagher and staff. We're gonna go out on a high note these last couple of days, starting with a sing-along tomorrow, but, yeah, I'm looking forward to some downtime, so I hope everyone else is too.
All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
I
All
have
in-
something for
All in
everybody.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.